Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. With us today, we have an outstanding guest, Dr. Denise Pope. She is the co-founder of Challenge Success, a senior lecturer at Stanford University Graduate of Education, and has won the Stanford University School of Education Outstanding Teacher and Mentor Award 3 times. Dr. Pope is also the author of 2 books, Doing School and Overloaded and Underprepared. I loved the book Doing School so much, and I have begun reading Overloaded and Underprepared too. Dr. Pope, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So today, we will be focusing on the book Doing School. I love this title so much because it shows exactly what most of us are doing, just doing school and living homework to homework. I love the content even more because you actually followed 5 high schoolers and observed how they behave at school, how they do their schoolwork, manage outside commitments, tests, and their social life. So for you, what was the pivotal moment that inspired you to dedicate your work to this? And how did you first observe students prioritizing performance over learning?
That's a great question. So I actually went into the whole project looking at a school that was working well. And I said, oh, this is a school that has a really good reputation. It's a large public high school. Why don't we go in there and find out what the secret sauce is that's making it work so well? And I decided to do a type of qualitative research called an ethnography. And that's what led me to shadow the 5 kids. And I asked the school to pick kids who were different and had different hobbies and were engaged in different things at school. And I would shadow them for basically September to June, really looking at what was working. And so what sort of surprised me is even though this was a great school and the kids had really good grades for the most part, there was a lot of stress. There was a lot of what we would call doing school, right? That name came from the students. What inspired me to take this and run with it is here's a school that had a great reputation, kids that were supposedly doing really well, but underneath, they weren't sleeping. They had ulcers, they had headaches, there was cheating that I saw. They were really stressed out. And I knew that we didn't want school to be this way. And so I wanted to do something to make a difference and change the reality for so many kids out there.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And you touched upon one of my next question about how you coined the term doing school. And you mentioned that students, just because they were the top students, they did do a lot of behavior that would not be counted towards healthy. You mentioned one student, Eve, she's like, all night, she calls herself voluntarily dependent on caffeine. So yeah, I found that really interesting. Can you break down what doing school means? So are we just becoming professional checklist completers instead of actual learners?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Kevin is the one who really coined the term. And I asked him one day because he was raising his hand in class and looked interested and engaged in learning. And I thought, oh, finally, some good news here. Kevin, tell me, what were you learning? And he said, people don't go to school to learn, right? They just do school. They're just doing school. They're going through the motions. Some of the students call themselves robo students, little robots. Just go home, do your homework, right? Grab dinner, stay up really late studying for a test. Next day, start all over, do all your extracurriculars. And it's crazy making. And we know that sleep is really connected to mental health and also learning. So sleep deprivation is not going to help. But it was really sad to hear that school is not about learning. It's about getting the grades and just going through the motion and playing the game. And that's why they wanted me to call the book Doing School.
Yeah, I liked that. And then in the book, you followed 5 high school students, observed how they behaved. At school, interacted with teachers was a key thing, peers, how they completed schoolwork, and how they and then you also uncovered their core beliefs about high school and college. So from all of this, what were the alarming actions and beliefs you noticed in these students?
I was really alarmed by the stress and the toll on the kids' mental health and physical health. I was a high school teacher. I taught hundreds of kids. I saw kids who would sometimes fall asleep at their desk in my class, and I tried not to take it personally. But when you're on the other side, when you're actually shadowing these students, you see how exhausted they are, how stressed they are, how they get crazy over a grade that isn't a grade that they want. I remember Kevin was really upset. He got a B+ on something and he really wanted it to be an A or an A-. I saw behavior that we don't want to see in school. I saw cheating. And they even said, we know that cheating is wrong. We're just under so much pressure from our parents and from colleges and from our peers and from ourselves that we know it's wrong, but we feel we don't have a choice. And so it was this compromising of their values in the name of playing the game of school that just drove me crazy. It just didn't make sense to make kids do that.
Yeah, and then you mentioned their cheating behaviors. You quote one of Eve's quotes here. I have a talent for listening out of both my ears. I can carry on a conversation with a friend or work on homework and still know what's going on the board. And I can also tell when they're going to ask a question, so I start paying attention. And she even says that she tries to ask a question every 10 minutes or so. So I feel you're not learning school, you're just learning how to manipulate the system.
Exactly. And kids learn to hide books in the bathroom and then go to the bathroom in the middle of a test. And this idea of you should raise your hand every 10 minutes, even if you don't know what's going on, and then you can fake your way out of it. Well, this is not what teachers want. This is not what students want. This is not what parents want.
Yeah. So you touched on a little bit, but why is this a problem? We know for mental health, but later on in their life, maybe in the journey in college and beyond, why could this be a problem?
I don't want to minimize mental health and physical health. You have one body and it has to last you your whole life, not till you're 18 or 24. So let's really emphasize mental and physical health. And they're not learning the material. So Eve basically says after she takes a test, all of that stuff empties out of her brain. When you're just playing the game, when you're cutting corners, when you're just going page by page, when you're literally drinking from a fire hose, you can't retain the information. You can't really learn the material in a way that we want you to know it and know it so deeply and be able to transfer it to other uses. So not only is there a problem with the kids physically and mentally, but there's a problem with if that's the outcome of school, we're not doing our jobs as educators because they're really not learning the material.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's Michelle who says it's just manipulating the system. And I think Eve also mentions that it's survival of the fittest. So it's just who knows how to play around this, who knows how to get around the teachers and get what they need, who can do that and graduate.
Yep. And that's why Kevin kisses up, right? Look, they were all really nice kids, but Kevin had a way to kiss up to the teachers and then maybe get his grade to bump up a little bit, or he had some special privileges. He got to sit in a special chair. And school should not have to harm students, and school should not have to be a game that you play. And some people say, isn't that the real world? Aren't they going to have to play that kind of game in the real world? No, that's the difference. In the real world, we don't have tests and quizzes 10 times a week. We are allowed to use lots of resources around us. We have to work with colleagues. We have to work together. We don't just get these little grades put on us. So I really feel we've made school this foreign thing that doesn't make any sense in the world right now.
Yeah, I really liked you mentioned that school, it's not actually going to be even used, or the format of school isn't going to be used later on. I guess college, but after that, in a real job, you're not going to have tests every day. You're not being graded you're not having a GPA.
No.
Yeah, making it reflect and mirror more how the real world actually is what actually helps students. Because actually I've heard a lot of stories, college students, I never realized school life after college would be this.
Yes. And so this idea that we are in school for 18 years, all to get us ready for 4 years, right? So 18 years to get you ready for 4 years of college or 2, it doesn't make any sense. And we put all this weight on it, right? Oh my gosh, I've got to do this to get into college. And then if you look, first of all, people can be successful at so many different paths. This is why we're called challenge success, right? We're challenging that narrow notion that you have to go through and get perfect grades and perfect scores and go to the best college and then you get the best job. First of all, that's not true. And second of all, we are challenging this notion that everyone has to do the same path. That doesn't make sense either. We have artists, we have creatives, we have people who are interested in different things. We have people whose school is just never going to work for them. They can still be absolutely fabulous, successful people. So this idea that there's only a few colleges and we got to go there, wrong. That you have to get perfect grades and perfect scores, wrong. That you won't be successful if you don't play the game of school for 18 years, also wrong.
Yeah, really challenging what the society calls success.
Yes.
Yeah. So what steps as youth can we take to fix or at least mitigate these problems?
That's a great question. So at Challenge Success, we center the youth experience and we know that you have power. So one would be, let's talk about working on yourselves, right? You need to sign up for a schedule that is doable. A lot of students sign up for schedules that are crazy hard and are going to really stress them out and are not going to allow them to have balance in their lives. When you're signing up for classes, really think through how much homework is in this class. How much time am I going to need to spend on this class? What makes sense in terms of taking how many honors or APs or whatever it is, right? And then when you look at your extracurricular activities, same thing. We're way overscheduled in extracurricular activities. So if you know you're not going to get home, and this isn't even counting commute time or whatever, but after sports practice or music or whatever, if you know you're going to get home really late, you're not having dinner with the family, you're not having time to be a kid and play, and you're not having time to sleep because then you have to do all those hours of homework. So as an individual, I want you to prioritize taking classes that you're interested in, taking the right balance of classes and extracurriculars so that you are allowed to sleep between 8 and 10 hours every night. That is what teenagers need. And you take care of your body physically. You get some physical exercise in and you have time for healthy food. So that's the first step. But the second step is you also have power to make changes at your school. And there are all sorts of things that schools do that are really antiquated that shouldn't be happening. How many tests or quizzes can you have in a day? Can you talk to teachers about that and change the policy there? Can you look at the schedule and figure out, does this make sense? Are we starting at 7 a.m.? A lot of schools start really early. That's not healthy for kids. So you have power in talking to adults and saying, here's our experience. Can we look at the research and make some really good changes?
Yeah, so the key things were firstly for your physical and let's say emotional and mental health, only taking up the classes that you can physically make there physically and also do the work for. So I would say actually be successful in the classes. And then also making your physical health, eating well, sleeping. And then also that you have the power to make changes at your school level. I'm very fortunate in my school, we don't have as many tests or whatnot, but I know that tests and quiz thing is very hard at other schools. And I do think for the school timings, I think there was a law in California at least that you can't start before 8 or 8:30. So see, after you can change the school system.
Absolutely. In fact, that law came from our work at Challenge Success, and we collected the data on student sleep times. And one of the senators, House Assemblyman, had a kid in one of our schools that we were working with, and he brought it to Sacramento. And now we helped lots and lots of kids across the state get more sleep, ideally, because their school starts not before 8:30 if it's a high school and not before 8 if it's a public middle school.
That's wonderful. To Dr. Pope, it was wonderful to have you today. The idea that we need to unlearn the performance mindset actively is powerful, and it gives us hope to break the cycle. We've just scratched the surface today, but the foundation is clear. Students are stressed, and the system is often rewarding the wrong behaviors. If this episode resonated with you, I highly recommend checking out Dr. Pope's book, Doing School, and the fantastic resources at Challenge Success. So we'll be back with Dr. Pope with another episode to dive into the practical strategies for Gen and engagement and how we can achieve true success without sacrificing our well-being. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Tharaka Foundation.